this is our we call it our McBrady. This essentially cleans the bottles as they come off the conveyor on the other side. What this is going to do is fill the bottles with nitrogen as they come off of the conveyor on the other side when they are initially dumped onto the track. They'll enter the slot on this other side, and they'll stay in that slot throughout the entire rotation until they exit on this side and continue along the track. And this is adjustable based on bottle diameter. This blue shield here, we have knobs in 4 locations here, and in the same spots on the other side. It's as simple as just loosening it up. You'd have to loosen all of them up, grab the handle and just pull it out or push it in. And as well, based on the bottle height, you can also contract this inner side of the wheel. There's a wheel on the other side that you spin that can either pull it away or bring it closer for shorter bottles. The power switch for the McBrady is right here. So off, oop, on. So the colors are kind of reversed. Off is green and red is on. It gets confusing. Just know that up, vertical is on, horizontal is off. As well for this machine, if there is a jam ever in the wheel, if a bottle gets stuck, this emergency light will light up red. And all that takes is a simple push or pull of this to unjam the bottle. And then you hit the start button here. If you ever need to stop it for any reason, stop button, restart it, green button. But while we're waiting for that to heat up, what we can do is go ahead and set up all of our, we call them change parts. And those are these here. These are all the pieces that will carry the bottles from the entry point of the conveyor through here and actually put them in the carousel and continue spinning them along the track here. This is our corker entry wheel. This is our closure star wheel. So whether you're corking or screw capping, this is the wheel that will push those bottles and put them underneath the closure. And this is our guide that goes behind there that keeps the bottles from just spitting out the back here. Two screws to fasten them down. And you do want to get these fairly tight just to eliminate any play or wiggle. And we have 2 star wheels that go here. They're identical, so it doesn't matter which one goes where. One is an entry, is on the left side, and one is an exit, goes on the right hand side. So they are identical, so it doesn't matter if they get swapped or switched, but just know that the left hand side is the entry and the right hand side is the exit. And lastly, for this piece here, similar to this is a guide for our entry and exit star wheels here. And similar concept. 3 holes, 3 bolts, and you'll want to make sure these are all tight as well. Any little bit of play or slack in this can cause the bottles to fall, to tip, and cause alignment issues. So essentially what will happen is the bottle will come through here at this point. We'll hit our entry screw. This is the entry screw here. As you notice these grooves here, as it spins, it will push the bottle this way into our entry star. It'll spin it and guide along the guide here onto these pedestals, which are these underneath all of the filler spouts. The pedestal will push the bottle up to the filler spout, raise it up so that it can fill, and it'll continue to spin around until it hits our exit wheel, where the pedestal will drop, fit the bottle into the exit wheel. It will spin along the guide, run down the conveyor into our corker star, and similar concept, it'll spin it along this guide to this point underneath the whichever closure you're going with, the corker or the screw cap. There's another pedestal down here that will rise and drop. When it rises, it pushes the neck of the bottle up underneath where it applies the closure. It'll lower back down. This wheel will continue to spin along the guide and send it out that direction towards the trailer. So while we're doing this, we can actually go ahead and we can start sizing for our bottle that we're going to be running. This particular bottle, the W137, the Chardonnay bottle. We size it to our tracks here, our guides, which can be loosened and tightened via the similar bolts that are attached here. I'll just show one. You loosen it up, you can move and push, pull the track, fit it. You don't want it too tight, you still want your bottle to be able to flow freely through there. Where it hits a little too tight here. Hits the entry screw here that we talked about. Catches it in that groove, and it'll spin it along. And I went ahead and set this up already, but I'll show you why I chose these. You want it tight enough to where it's not just wobbling, but loose enough to where it's not going to jam up and get stuck in there.
And how did you loosen and tighten that?
So this one, we have different sized wheels, or stars. This one is fit specifically for this size bottle, so that's the one that we chose to put in there. If you had a smaller diameter, we would switch to one of these smaller sizes. If you notice, this bottle's a little too large. It doesn't fit all the way in that groove. Whereas this one here, a little bit of wiggle room, but it fits right into that groove there. And all of those wheels, all of our change parts is what we call these. They're all stored up in these overhead compartments.
So just going over the star wheels and the different size bottles that we use. First one I'll show an example of here. It's called depending on the manufacturer, it's usually a WAU or a W137. It's considered a burgundy bottle. Star wheel size is 82 for those guys. Moving down to this guy, this is probably the most standard size bottle that you'll use. It's considered just a standard Bordeaux. It's a W65, W5. It's a 77, 78 mil, so that's the set of star wheels you'd want to use for those guys. Then the third, it's considered a Hock bottle, a Riesling bottle, typically labeled as W82 or W13, and that would be a 76, so that would work on the 77, 78 set star wheels as well. So the other set that we have, it's kind of more of a custom set. It's designed for an ice wine bottle. So it's a much smaller diameter bottle, and they're a 375 mil compared to the 750 mil. And there's only one set for ice wine that we have. I believe it's like 58, and it's very clear that that's the only bottle that'll fit into it. So this is a champagne style bottle. We do have the capability to run the smaller standard size champagne bottle, which I believe is an 86 or an 84. If it gets any bigger than that, we don't have any change parts to move over. For example, this size, this is a heavyweight champagne bottle. It's about 89 mil, and we just don't have the capability to work that. But the standard size, I believe, is 84, 86, and we do have parts for those as well. What we do for these bottles, it's kind of a tedious process. Obviously, we can't bottle champagne in the trailer, but we can label them. So that is a process of just basically feeding them through the door by hand to somebody in front of the labeler, and he's just physically placing them on the track in front of the labeler.
And then one other thing, the size is the height for this. We'll actually have to, what we'll do here is turn it to, from auto to manual. That way the whole unit doesn't start operating. and you have control over speed. And in order to manipulate all of this, we'll come back to our control module over here. And this is going to be your manual operation. Here are these two buttons. This is forward, this one's reverse. So we'll go ahead and forward slowly. The bowl, this whole unit, you can raise and lower this entire unit with these two buttons here. And your first up and down. The first one on this line here. So we're going to lower it. And you don't want to sit it right on top of the bottle. You want it right around, what is it, 10 millimeter range? Or a good measuring tool is typically just slide your finger in there till it just barely touches your finger or your knuckle. And then you can make micro adjustments afterwards. That's a good starting point. So we'll put our wheel back on here. This is going to be your fluid level. This middle one here is going to go back to your valves here on the filler bowl, and that's going to adjust your fill height in your bottle. So you can raise or lower that. As we'll run a couple test bottles through to check for fill heights. And obviously we'll check with the client to make sure it's at the desirable level. If it's too high, too low, we'll go to that button there and we'll go ahead and we'll raise and lower that to get to that fill height that they want. So it's set at a certain level and it'll fill. So this triggers as soon as this comes up and the pedestal raises, it triggers it to start filling. And based on the level that you have this entire unit set up is how high. There isn't like a specific millimeter or centimeter measurement to our fluid level ounces. You just raise and lower it. You can take the bottle after you fill it, you can pour it into a graduated cylinder and measure your volume, and then make adjustments like that. This wheel here, this black roller here, should be centered on these pressure tabs on the filler spouts. And what that does is triggers your vacuum, so it keeps it from overfilling. So we'll drop the lever here to loosen this up, is right here. And we'll drop this black roller down to just about center. And this pressure tab here. And what that does is triggers the vacuum on the filler spout, the leveling vacuum. Right in between these two screws are one on, one or the other. And as it spins through, this wheel applies pressure and initiates the leveling vacuum and shuts off any more filling in the bottle. So this entire side is good to go. And we'll fit it in this track here. Okay, before we move any further than that, we'll go ahead and take this drain pan off. You leave this on. You leave this on while bottles run through there. You can bend valves, break them, bend them, and pretty much have to call it a stop for the day. So you want to make sure that's taken off before you run bottles through. Okay, so at this point, we're going to hit our corker star wheel and our nitrogen sparger. This is for applying corks to bottles. And again, you don't want to sit it inside the bottle. You sit just above, like so. Nothing crazy. Sometimes you have to make minor adjustments to get the bottle to fit in there. This is a bottle stop. And all this does is it keeps the bottle from slamming all the way into the wheel. Like that. If you notice, there's a little bit of space between the groove of the wheel and the bottle. And because we adjusted that, we'll adjust our nitrogen sparger to center over the top. As it comes through, it'll give it a little squirt of nitrogen. And then once we're in our star wheel, you can just kind of manually spin this where it sits just underneath the head where you're going to get your closure for the bottle. And same thing, the control for this is the third one in this line, up and down, nothing crazy. Okay, so at this point we're going to bring this down to roughly finger or knuckle thickness. Get you in a ballpark range, and again, you can make micro adjustments. It's a rule of thumb, no pun intended, but a good measuring tool is more or less the thickness of your finger or your knuckle, whether you're measuring to the bottom of the filler spout, your measurement here, or measurements down on the labeling side. And at this point, you'd be able to go ahead and pop a cork in there, which we will do once we run our test bottle through and we actually put wine in the bottle. We'll run it to this point and put a cork in. But at this point, everything on this side is measured and sized the way it needs to be for this bottle. Finish this side off. All right, now that we're on the back side of the corker star wheel here, we'll reach our next set of guides or rails. Those can be loosened and fastened the same way as the other ones. Just touching, but not too tight. And I usually will just push it through until I reach some resistance. Which is right here. So if you notice, as I was pushing the bottle along here, there's this white arm sticking there. What that is a bottle sensor. That allows more or less a traffic jam to be avoided, a bottle. So as the bottles come through here, they will start to stack up behind this entry wheel for the labeling side of the trailer. And as they hit this point, they start to slow down because this is set at a certain speed. So as the bottles start to stack up, if they bump this and this sensor is jammed back like this, it will shut this side down. So all of the wheels, the conveyor, everything will stop, it will pause until this arm is in the forward motion again. And you can tell because as it comes back, there's a click here. If it moves any further back than completely perpendicular to the track, there's a click. And as soon as it clicks, that's when everything shuts down. Once it's free and clear, once it's back in the forward position, this side will start up again, and the process continues as well. But that's something we kind of set up as we calibrate everything. We set the speed to where traffic jams can be avoided. We match everything up on both sides of the machine. So we'll go ahead and we'll move to the other side, and I'll show how to set up the back side of the corker. All right, and one other thing to remember when you're setting up the for corking is put your reservoir tube on the back. So with the vacuum that we're showing on the front, all of that fluid that it's sucking up, that vacuum sucking up, is going to run through these lines and into this reservoir here. For no other purpose other than to keep from making a mess. It's as simple as righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. You don't want it super tight, just snug, hand snug. And then you complete the seal with this screw up top. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Not crazy snug. You want to be able just to loosen it up with your finger if need be. That's how you set that up. Your corker's set up. With this, we'll call it a head. You're able to switch it from corker to screw cap. And since we're set up for corking now, we want to make sure that the rest of the system is calibrated the same way and set up for corking. So you want to make sure you're set up here and locked in. And then on the screen, notice here, it'll tell you what type of closure you're using. And you can scroll through that with the correlating button. So notice crown, screw cap, and cork. So we'll leave it on cork, and return, and then underneath here, this piece here, you can switch it. It takes 2 hands. To right, or back to left. To right is going to be crown cap and screw cap. To the left is corker. So you want to make sure it's set up to the left. And then the very last one you want to check is the clear as day display here. Screw cap or cork. Switch it to cork. So there's 4 components. The toggle switch here, on the screen, down below, and the head itself. So there's 4 Allen heads, 2 in the front, 2 in the back that you'll loosen up. Right here, you'll pull this out. It's basically just a stopper screw or stopper bolt. You'll pull that out, loosen these screws, and you can turn the whole head to where the screw cap is here and the corker is over here. Then you'll tighten those back up and push that stopper bolt back in. And they just have to be hand snug. It doesn't take much to loosen them. From here up, just spins as one unit. And we'll show you that when we do our changeover for screw cap. And that completes the corker setup. Then we'll move on to the labeling side. So as we push our bottle along, we'll go ahead and continue sizing all the way to the labeling machine here. We've sized to the entry screw. Loosen this up a little bit. And there are change parts that get fit on this side as well. As the bottle comes in, there we go. This is going to be our guide. This is our entry screw. And again, over on this side, we use the 84 that fits this style bottle. And our exit screw, same size. So when you place these on here, it won't allow you to set them in any other way than with the numbers up. You got your large diameter hole and small, large pin, small pin. Notice on the top, there's just one hole. And you want to double check, just slide the bottle in there. Make sure it's not too tight, not too loose. That's perfect. You can change these out. These also have different diameter wheels and guides. Obviously we chose this number because it matches the change parts on the other side and this bottle. But if for whatever reason one or the other was just a little too big or a little too tight, you could change it out. And there is also a guide here as the conveyor carries the bottle along. This wheel catches it, or the conveyor will push it right into that groove. It'll slide it between the wheel and the guide to the groove on the plate on this side, and this entire unit will spin. And in order to adjust this, it's the same concept as the rest of the unit over here. After we turn it on, power button is here. We'll wait for our screen to light up. Once your screen looks like this, you're ready to go. This one is a little bit more intricate than the control module on the other side. There is a menu for this, which I'll show you from the beginning here. Picture the tool here. That's where you get to all of your adjustment menu. And in order to raise and lower this, which these both work together, so when you raise and lower one, the other will rise and lower as well. And that is right here. Down and up. So we want to bring this down. Same concept as the other side. There's the finger width or knuckle measurement. And you want to be careful with this one because you can get carried away if you're not paying attention and smash your finger. So you just, once you get low, you just take it slow. Once it just barely touches, you're good to go. And again, you can make micro adjustments, but this will put you in the ballpark. And so this piece here is what will feed our capsules. So once we've applied our cork to the bottle and it gets to this point, these capsules, which will stock up on this tray here, will feed down onto this conveyor here, feed into this cup, which there is a vacuum that will suck the capsule into that cup. And as this bottle reaches this point, underneath that cup there is a sensor right here that senses the glass or the closure that's there, senses that there's a bottle there. And this cup will flip and we'll apply the capsule. We'll drop the capsule down on top of the neck of the bottle. We'll reach this point. This will give the capsule an extra tap just to make sure it's snug on the neck, and then we'll continue along the process. One more thing with these heads, just a little bit into why these heads are on here right now. We do have change parts for these as well. This particular head was chosen for this type of closure, which is PVC. It's a heat shrink head. So once the capsule is on the bottle, it comes underneath this head, and these heads actually lower, and it heat shrinks this and seals off the neck of the bottle. The other heads we have are roller heads, and those for a different style capsule. And that's just why we have these on here now. So we've gone through everything, the main part of the trailer with the filler bowl, the labeling side, and the last thing we're going to do before we're ready to bottle is we call it an integrity test. So we want to make sure all the nitrogen flowing through the lines is at the level it needs to be at. So in order to do so, we need to find our power plug. Plug in here. Shows that it's on or plugged in. We've got power, and we'll switch it on. And obviously the hissing you hear is the nitrogen entering the nitrogen generator there. The next step is to turn our control unit on. There's a silver button on the side here. Wait till we get to our home screen. While we're waiting for that, we are going to reconfigure our valves down here. We'll start with the far, if I can reach it. Did there was configure these valves to isolate our final filter, and that's going to check our pressure. So next we're going to detach our drain hose and attach our nitrogen line. This is just a test line, so this won't stay attached. Looks like we are set to go on our screen. So we'll start new test. Or we do have the test saved in the system already, so we'll just click on that. And you can really type in anything here. Type in my initials. Something. Normally you'll put initials for the wine you're running. And don't need a serial number. Okay. Once you hit this screen, you can hit the play button. Before you do want to make sure that your PSI on the generator is at 80. And it looks like we're good to go. So we want to check our outlet pressure. So We've confirmed that we're good to go. We come back here, same screen. We'll go ahead and push what looks like a play button. And our test is running. It's pressurizing. And it says downstream pressure too high. So anytime you get an error message, you want to check along this entire manifold here. Make sure you've got all the right stuff open and the right stuff closed. So when we run our test bottles, we'll put it on manual to control the speed. Again, we have control over what we're doing. So I flip it from auto to manual. And we don't need to let it run through the wheel. We can start it here. We've got our corker vacuum, our bowl vacuum or valve vacuum, and our pump for the wine. And then this is the fill level, the amount of liquid that's actually in the bowl. So what I'll do now is we're checking for fill height. So now that it's on manual, we're going to turn our vacuum back on. Go back to our manual controls. I want it to go forward as if normal operation. I'm going to switch it back to auto. And at this point, I just hit this green button. It's not filling any higher than where it's at now because we have the filler spout set at a specific level. When it hits this, the fill level cuts off. And before we ever put a cork in it, we want to make sure our corker vacuum is on. Check what we call the ullage, or headspace between the top of the liquid and the bottom of the cork, as well as our cork depth below the top of the bottle, and our cork vacuum. We'll make sure we have a vacuum. Any excess oxygen is getting sucked out.
So for the ullage, we have a chart printed out here. So this is how we determine basically the fill volume. It's all based off of temperature. So first you need to figure out the temperature of your wine that's going into the bottle. And then that'll tell you, depending on what size of cork you're using, whether 45 or 49 mil cork, how much space between the bottom of the cork to the level of the volume. That'll tell you how much space you need there to equal 750 milliliters. That volume will change depending on the temperature of the wine, just due to expansion. So right now, at that point, we would measure this, look at what the temperature of the wine is in the bowl, and then that'll tell us how much volume is in the bottle.
The temperature of the wine in the bowl can be found on the screen here. So we'll monitor that as well.
The next thing we would test is the vacuum. So we're trying to determine if there is negative, 0 to negative head pressure, basically. So we have this tool, which is just a simple pressure gauge on a needle that has a small hole in it. So we take that and we force it straight through the cork. Until we can see that the hole of the needle is into the headspace. So we have the needle into the headspace, and our vacuum is below 0, which means our vacuum is good. Next we can do our cork height. It's usually winemaker's discretion. This one's sitting kind of low, so we'll raise this up, and that's just a manual adjustment. And what we do is we have this plunger, which is the cork plunger, just threaded on top. too deep, we'll raise it up. Drop it back down. And then retest with a new bottle. At this stage, we know we have a good vacuum. Our cork height is where we want it to be. Our ullage is correct, depending on the temperature of the wine. And now we're ready to move on down to the liquid. This whole unit is set and ready to go.
So this is our capsule feed tray. We do PVC as well as polylaminate capsules. These ones we have in here are PVC. And it really is just as simple as grabbing them out of the box. They do come in longer, they usually come about that long, so you have to take some off to size it to the tray. And you literally just set it there and just let it roll right into place. And it's got a stopper arm here to keep it from overfilling. There's a conveyor here that will carry the capsules along to this clamp or this jaw. And this cup here has a vacuum on it, and it will suck the capsule in one at a time and feed it onto the bottle. So I'm going to kind of show you how to set that up. So you'll come over here. You want to kind of start at your main screen here. This is your tools menu. And the item we're looking for here for the capsules is right there. And to manually lift this component and flip this cup so we can get these old capsules out of there and put the new ones in. Touch the screen here. And I'll show you that again. And you can see it flip. So now that this jaw is up, you just simply push those out of the way and remove them.
This has a little hole right there. That spurts a shot of air.
Oh, it's air.
It shoots the cap.
Shooting it. So all of this kind of works in unison. As this jaw comes up, this tray comes up as well. It allows another roll of capsules to fall onto the conveyor. Just manually push those to this stopper bar that comes out. You don't have to slam it in there, just gently touch there. And then you'll come back to the screen. Hit the button again. And it will push another capsule into the cup as it flips back up, and this jaw will close, and it holds those capsules in place. And as they feed through, there is a sensor here. You can see the red light. Once the capsules pass that point, it'll sense that more capsules are needed, and this bar will rise, and more capsules will drop down and feed into place. So I'll go ahead and I'll run this bottle through now that we have a cork on it. We'll run it through and we'll put a capsule on it. So once you get to this point, as we showed earlier, this sensor will pick up that there's a corked bottle there, and it will distribute a capsule, which I'll show you in just a second here. And then once it's got a capsule, it reaches this point, and this kind of just gives it a little tap, make sure the capsule's seated properly. And it will then convey or rotate up underneath these heat shrink heads. With the heat, we also have an air supply to kind of help regulate the temperature. And that is a simple toggle on-off switch over on this side, which will turn on now. So I'll go ahead, I'll run a test bottle.
So I just slowed the speed down. So right now, I went from automatic mode to manual. That way I can just hold down the button and stop it whenever I want to.
Now all we're adding is just the bottle. Ready to go. We're on, machine is on. I'm going to start the actual wheel.